Welcome to Formosa Dream Chasers.
We're your hosts, Mary Ann
and Qing-en.
Please join us as we explore the journeys amazing people take in pursuit of their dreams.
And get insights from their experiences.
Let's hit the road.
And get started.
Welcome to Formosa Dream Chasers. Have you ever wondered what happens when two cultures come together through food, passion, and a dream? A few months ago, we had the privilege of meeting Olga and her husband, Lin Yue, a Ukrainian-Taiwanese couple bringing the flavors of Ukraine to Kaohsiung, Taiwan. Their journey from Ukraine to Taiwan led them to open one of the country's few Ukrainian restaurants named Hata. In today's episode, we dive into Lin Yue's incredible journey, from starting out as a Taiwanese entrepreneur in Ukraine to making the life-changing decision to return to Kaohsiung. He shares what factors drew him back home and how he's now helping to connect and promote understanding between Taiwan and Ukraine. The interview was conducted in Mandarin Chinese, and we have dubbed Lin Yue's responses for your convenience. How did you meet Olga?
Olga majored in Chinese studies at university and was my assistant at the time. That's how we met. I was pursuing further studies and had the opportunity to meet different people, while Olga had just graduated from the Chinese language department. My Ukrainian language skills were still limited, and since Olga had studied abroad in Heilongjiang, China, she was fluent in Chinese. This was the reason why I asked her to help me better understand our clients' conversations. From that point on, we started working together, traveling to many cities, and gradually getting to know each other better. At first, we didn't have any specific plans. Our focus was mainly on work, and our cultural backgrounds were quite different. At the time, Olga had a boyfriend and was considering starting a family with him. So our relationship was strictly professional, like two parallel lines moving forward together. But through a series of unexpected events, we ended up together. Olga had a strong interest in Eastern culture, particularly in the Chinese language and Chinese studies, and a deep desire to learn. She would often ask questions like why there are gods, why Buddhism exists, and about the lifestyle and eating habits of people of this culture. As she continued to explore these topics, I had the opportunity to introduce her to Taiwanese customs and culture. Over time, she not only learned how to communicate with Taiwanese people, but also came to understand Taiwan's social norms. These experiences eventually led her to pursue a doctoral degree in Taiwan. This is how we ended up together.
Are you from Kaohsiung? How did you end up in Ukraine, and why did you move back?
I'm from Kaohsiung, and I was running my own business in Ukraine when the war between Russia and Ukraine broke out in 2014. At first, I wasn't too concerned because I thought the war was far from us since it was happening in the eastern regions. I assumed we wouldn't be affected and that life would continue as usual. But I was wrong. As the war disrupted the entire country's economy, impacting the exchange rate, oil prices, and the stock market, leading to currency devaluation and price fluctuations. This brought business activities to a standstill. At that time, many people started stockpiling goods, and before long, the entire economy ground to a halt. In 2014, Russia invaded Ukraine and took control of Crimea and Donbas region. Although I was there at the time, my understanding of the situation was very limited. I assumed things would return to normal in a few days, even believing that the military would withdraw and I would be able to return home without any issues. However, 2 years have passed. The war had not ended. Many Taiwanese might mistakenly think that the war started in 2022, but in reality, It has been ongoing for 10 years. In 2014, Russia held illegal referendums in Crimea and Donbass, forcibly incorporating these regions into its territory. Russia claimed that this was to protect the Russian-speaking residents there and spread the narrative that the people in those regions no longer wanted to be Ukrainian, instead preferring to become Russian citizens. After negotiations with the EU, the United States, and Germany, the international community intervened politically and called for a peaceful resolution without the use of force. However, Russia ultimately took control of these areas successfully. And this happened almost without any military conflict, but through political maneuvering. It was from that point on that I truly understood how war unfolds. By then, I could no longer run my business, and I couldn't predict when the situation would end. After waiting for 2 years with no end in sight, all my efforts felt like they had been in vain, and my business plans completely collapsed. It was an extremely harsh lesson. That was the moment I realized I needed to move back to Taiwan.
How did you rebuild your life after returning to Taiwan?
After returning to Taiwan, I fell into a deep depression. Since I was older, finding a job became even more challenging. At the time, I naively believed that my language skills, English, Ukrainian, and Russian, would give me an advantage in the job market. But that wasn't the case. These less common languages, especially languages of a war-torn country, didn't create business opportunities. As a result, there was little demand for someone with my skill set. I sent out countless resumes but received no response, which took a huge toll on my confidence. It got especially harder as I grew older, making it even more difficult to find work. At that time, my parents were also aging. My father was already in his 90s, and my mother was quite elderly as well. They both had some age-related health issues, so I decided to focus on taking care of my family. Since I couldn't afford to hire a caregiver, I had to take care of both my parents and my children on my own. The weight of daily life felt overwhelming. To support our family financially, Olga took on tutoring and worked as an English teacher. That's how we managed to get through that difficult period. With 2 elderly parents and 2 young children at home, my options were extremely limited. Every day felt like a struggle just to get by, and I had no idea if or when things would change.
How did you come up with the idea of opening a Ukrainian restaurant?
After my parents passed away, I no longer had my caregiving role. Since my children were still young, I knew I still needed to find something else. I needed a stable income to support my family. At one point, I thought about opening a small shop selling imported goods. However, starting a business required an initial investment for inventory and setting up displays. And at the time, I felt I wasn't yet in a position to do that. However, in 2022, my wife suggested that we find a way to help people from Ukraine. So we began a series of 8 programs, which we successfully carried out. During this process, we struggled to find a suitable place to hold meetings and discuss important matters. Every time we wanted to have a meeting to discuss a press conference or even write a press release, we had to meet in coffee shops. But these places were not ideal because they were often crowded and didn't provide the privacy or space we needed. That's when my wife proposed an idea. If the opportunity arose, we could open a Ukrainian restaurant. At the time, our friends thought it was a good idea, especially in a city like Kaohsiung, where there was no place for Ukrainians to gather. As we looked into it, we learned that there were no Ukrainian restaurants in Taiwan, except for one in Yilan, not even Taipei had one. So we decided to stay true to Ukrainian home cooking and see if it could succeed. After discussing it further, my wife was fully on board and took an active role in designing the menu. With her support and a clear vision, we moved forward with a plan and eventually opened a Ukrainian restaurant.
Why did you decide to name the Ukrainian restaurant Hata? Does Hata have any special meaning?
We chose the name Hata for the restaurant because in Ukrainian, Hata refers to a small rural house, which essentially symbolizes a home. Many Ukrainians come from rural areas and move to big cities for work, and their parents typically own land and a modest house in the countryside. When someone from Kiev asks where you're going, the common response is, I'm going back to my little house, meaning you are returning to your parents' home. We felt that this word evoked a strong sense of home and was very meaningful. Since we weren't a big corporation, we wanted Hata to embody that feeling of warmth and familiarity. Our hope was that whenever Ukrainians saw the name, they would think, we are going to Hata, we are going home. That's the story behind our choice of name.
Since opening the restaurant, what kind of response have you received from the community?
Since opening the restaurant, we've received incredible support from customers who heard about us through the news or our aid-related efforts. Many have come not only to enjoy a meal, but also to show their encouragement. Some donors have visited as well, and friends we met during our fundraising efforts have brought others to support us. We make sure to keep them updated on our progress. What's been especially rewarding is that while our restaurant was primarily meant to serve food, it has also become an unexpected hub for cultural exchange. It's a space where people, especially Taiwanese interested in learning more about Ukraine, can find information, hear first-hand accounts, and connect with the culture. This unexpected outcome has been both surprising and deeply meaningful to us.
Do you have any plans for the future?
Yes, we do. We've realized that because of our involvement in cultural activities and exchanges, we can't always be at the restaurant. For example, we often go out to give lectures, host talks, or introduce Ukrainian culture, so we are not always on site. Because of this, we've decided to redesign the layout and decor of our second floor. Our goal is to provide Taiwanese visitors with a basic introduction to Ukraine, starting with its location on the map and its neighboring countries. We'll also explain Ukraine's historical relationship with Russia, tracing back to the 10th century. Additionally, we want to showcase Ukraine's major products, some of which are world-renowned, and present this information on large posters covering the entire second-floor wall. This way, guests who come to dine can also learn about Ukraine's importance in Europe, gain a deeper understanding of the Russia-Ukrainian war, and see why the conflict escalated. This is what I hope to accomplish in the future.
What dishes would you recommend for first-timers to your restaurant?
I recommend two dishes. First is the salty pork fat, which we call salo. It's a common and affordable food in Ukraine. You'll notice that very few Ukrainians are overweight. I used to wonder how they could eat pork fat at every meal without gaining weight. When I asked a doctor, he explained that salo is different from the bacon found in Taiwan. It's not saturated fat, but raw pork fat that has been salted and preserved. Because of the way it's processed, the fat is easier for the body to expel rather than being stored in internal organs, which helps prevent weight gain. It pairs well with bread and garlic, and the flavor is similar to the Taiwanese dish, garlic white meat. It's delicious and contains unsaturated fats, making it a healthier option. The second dish I recommend is chicken Kiev. It's a famous Ukrainian comfort food and a well-known dish worldwide. Every restaurant in Kiev serves this dish, while many places offer frozen chicken Kiev that's simply reheated. We prefer to make ours with fresh chicken. We found that fresh chicken tastes better, especially when combined with butter and truffle sauce inside. This dish is quite labor-intensive to prepare, but it's absolutely worth trying.
Having experienced so many ups and downs, can you share some lessons you've learned, especially when it comes to overcoming obstacles?
Steve Jobs once said, "Stay hungry, stay foolish," and I completely agree. That mindset has shaped my life. You discover your true potential through adversity. If you stay in your comfort zone, you'll never accomplish much, but the struggles you face along the way becomes some of your most valuable memories. Even though I've lived through war and lost everything, the lessons I've learned and the personal growth I've gained are priceless. Sometimes I feel a quiet confidence inside me. Even as I continue working hard, I trust that everything will eventually fall into place. It's almost as if life is arranging things for you. You just need to keep moving forward and never give up. So my advice to young people is simple. Stay hungry, stay foolish.
That wraps up our conversation with Olga Kulish and her husband, Lin Yue, the owners of Hata, a Ukrainian restaurant in Kaohsiung, Taiwan.
One of the things that came out of this episode's chat with Lin Yue was on how the Russo-Ukrainian War started, but Taiwanese have this impression that it only started in 2022.
That's true. I think most people see what is happening based on the preliminary information we get from the news. And majority of the people don't really see or know what is happening or what has happened underground if this isn't being reported or if you weren't there.
I agree. That's why for our next episode, we invited Ukrainian Alex Komenko, one of the organizers of Taiwan Stands with Ukraine, to discuss the underlying causes of the war and their efforts for the last 3 years for peace and freedom in Ukraine.
We would like to invite everyone to please tune in again next week to our show, Formosa Dream Chasers.
Stay tuned. This is Ching and Cho.
And Mary Ann Shoko.
See you guys next week. Bye.
Listen! Are you listening? This is the sound of my country. This is the sound of Taiwan.
Taiwan, a small island with a whole world of sounds.
You're tuning in to Radio Taiwan International, Taiwan's national broadcaster. Here at RTI, we have a range of entertaining and informative content for you to enjoy. You can find all of our content on our website at en.rti.org.tw. That's en.rti.org.tw for news, shows, and more. We're also on shortwave radio. If you're residing in South Asia, we broadcast from 1600 to 1700 UTC at 9405 kHz. From all of us here at RTI, we wish you a lovely day.